Free agency now underway in the NBA. And in the overnight hours, the biggest move of day number one. A 4-year max contract worth $212 million. Paul George, no longer an LA Clipper, now in Philadelphia, joining the 76ers. DRS, you gave us your reaction earlier in the show, in our opening segment. But this, a huge and seismic move around the association. One that was speculated, one that was rumored, and in the summer of Paul George, where his intentions and where he would next land, would he remain in Los Angeles? The two sides unable to come to a deal. Where would he next go? That would probably be the biggest move of free agency. We see it in the markets. We see it in his decision. Paul George now in Philadelphia.
Yeah, good move by the Philadelphia 76ers because they needed something to go along with Joel Embiid. Now, also, are we saying that the Philadelphia 76ers are now the best team in the Eastern Conference? No, we're not. But they'll be competitive and in that mix. And if they're healthy, and also, here's what you're banking on. Joel Embiid trying to stay healthy throughout an entire season. Maybe he takes a look at that backseat approach and says, you know what, I do want to be MVP, but I got to play 65 games, and if I don't do that, maybe it's better for my playoff run. Paul George certainly has been one of those players that you can count on, not missing major chunks of seasons, even though he is getting a little bit older. And Tyrese Maxey, who is going to sign a max extension here, you're anticipating him getting even better than he was on the year before basis. The Philadelphia 76ers made some other moves. We'll get to that in a little bit. But for Paul George added to Joel Embiid, that gives them a legitimate force. And you can honestly say right now, even though we still have a long way to go in free agency and the rosters will fill out, it's probably going to be what? The Boston Celtics, the Milwaukee Bucks, the New York Knicks, and the Philadelphia 76ers in that top four.
Yeah.
And that's all you can ask for at that point. You want to play well throughout the season. You still want to have a team that meshes. You want to get at least 60 games on the court between these three players before you head into the playoffs. It was a solid move for the Sixers. And as I brought up in the opening parts of this show, it's one of those where if you wanted Jimmy Butler, he's a little bit older, right? But you still say to yourself, okay, Jimmy, Paul George, what's the difference? Well, you both were going to have to sign a max extension, but one was probably going to be held hostage by the Miami Heat, knowing that we're not just going to give the Philadelphia 76ers a discount because Jimmy Butler wants to go there and get paid. You would have to give up multiple first-round draft picks. You didn't have to give that up with Paul George, and the Philadelphia 76ers over the next couple of years have some years with multiple first-round draft picks. So you do have a team in place for now, and you didn't give up your future. So I like the move for the Sixers, but again, as a Sixers fan, I'm not saying like, whoa, this is the move that puts us over the top, like, 2004, hey, the Eagles finally got Terrell Owens, we're headed to the Super Bowl, and they made it there. It's not that type of move, but you can still have really good basketball in the city with a competent team next year now.
And so I think it is about resetting those expectations, right? DRS, when we were together on Thursday after night number one of the NBA draft in a very seismic 24 hours for the New York Knicks, the Mikal Bridges trade, the re-signing of OG Anunoby, and where the market had moved, the Knicks had the second best price to win the Eastern Conference, just over $2 behind the Celtics. The C's plus 135, the Knickerbockers at plus 350. We looked at Philadelphia around a 7-1 number, and both you and I said, when Paul George signs, if what had been rumored, Philadelphia being a frontrunner, became expected, which is what we saw last night, we would expect the Sixers' price to greatly shift and alter the Eastern Conference odds as they have. Philly now in front of New York with the second best price at 4-1. The Celtics still remain a short favorite in comparison to everybody in the Eastern Conference, in comparison really to everybody in the NBA to win the championship next year. Plus 145 on Boston. New York 50 cents back behind the 76ers at plus 450. And does this move mean Philadelphia should be the favorite or is right there neck and neck with Boston? No. I think in the conversations after the Mikal Bridges trade about what the ceiling was elevated to in New York City, it's kind of the same question in Philadelphia. Everybody is playing for that number 2 spot in the East. The Boston Celtics are still well ahead of everybody in the NBA, specifically the Eastern Conference. You're trying to compete for that second spot to rival the C's. The Knicks haven't been in the Eastern Conference Finals since 2000. Philadelphia hasn't been there since 2001. The moves this offseason in the past week give them a great opportunity to be in the ECF alongside the C's next year, at least expected entering the season.
Yeah, and that's the goal because, and I said this with the New York Knicks as well when they made those moves. Was I in love with every move? No, but you can't fault, like, the fan base is going to be fired up. The organization felt like they put their best foot forward, and sometimes that's all you can ask for. And there's no guarantee that the Boston Celtics are just going to run roughshod over the NBA next year. Injuries happen,
Right.
team chemistry happens, maybe you get fat and happy since you won a championship. Those are all things to certainly play out. And also the injuries that pile up from a season that you go to a championship, like Kristaps Porzingis being out for 6 months or so. But the difference for me between the Sixers and the Knicks are, yes, Jalen Brunson is a bona fide superstar in the NBA, but it just feels like the guys that they're surrounded with are all bench pieces here, tryhards that can be very good in the NBA. In the Philadelphia 76ers, you have an MVP in Joel Embiid, a multi-time All-Star in Paul George, and an emerging superstar in Tyrese Maxey. So they're going about it a little bit differently here. But both of those fan bases, the Sixers and the Knicks fan bases, should be fired up because both of those teams really improved themselves and maybe have a chance to get after the Celtics. And at the end of the day, that's all you can ask for, because I understand sometimes it's really championship or bust. But what were you going to do if you're the Knicks? Blow the team up because you can't compete with the Celtics for the next 2 to 3 years? What were the Sixers going to do? Go back to the process, trade Joel Embiid and say, well, we can't do anything with the Celtics. We'll see you in 5 years. This was the best route for both of those teams to go. And I like the move for Paul George coming to the Sixers over Jimmy Butler. So I think it was an added incentive for them.
You are completely correct, DRS. The New York Knicks have a balanced and deep roster that is fit perfectly for their head coach in Tom Thibodeau. You would think the star power in Philly. Tyrese Maxey is an emerging superstar. Joel Embiid's an MVP, and when healthy and he can play 65 games, will be in the conversation for that most valuable player award once again in 2024-25. And Paul George is a 9-time All-Star. He is one of 8 players to reach 9 All-Star games currently in the association. That is what he has done throughout his career. Yes, a veteran at 34 years old, just spent 5 seasons in L.A., and the Clippers tried to pair up Paul George and Kawhi Leonard to lead this team to a championship, to that organization to heights they never saw. And we'll look a little bit about the L.A. Clippers on the other side. That didn't happen, but Paul George now tries to provide that optimistic piece, that third and final piece to create one of the better big threes currently in the NBA. We'll see if it pays off in Philly. Elsewhere around NBA free agency, next on the Early Line. An end of an era in Los Angeles for Paul George back in his native Southern California, trying to lead the LA Clippers to heights this organization had rarely ever seen. A Western Conference Finals appearance, but never beyond that. Never a conference title. Of course, then not a Larry O'Brien trophy. And the idea, DRS, when Paul George was acquired 5 years ago by this Clippers franchise for a lot in return to Oklahoma City, was to pair PG with Kawhi Leonard. They were rarely on the floor together throughout playoff runs. And when you look back on the PG trade from OKC to LA, it will go down as one in the last decade that many NBA fans will point to. 4 unprotected first-round picks, another protected first-round lottery pick as well, a couple of pick swaps back to OKC, and namely in return from Los Angeles to Oklahoma City, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who is going to be in contention for an MVP award next year for OKC. And Paul George, after 5 years of unfulfilled promise in LA, is now in Philadelphia.
Yeah, and sometimes that's the way it works out. And you take a look at Presti, the general manager in OKC. This was his plan all throughout. You know what? Let me think I can get a player back in the trade that might be able to help us. Who knew it would be a possible MVP candidate? Who knew all of those picks would be stacked up here? And now you have all those coffers full that you can make those moves now to make. But also, you can't fault the Clippers because the goal in the NBA is to win a championship. If you felt you had that Batman and Robin, you said, you know what? In their prime, let me get after it. I don't mind that move for the Clippers. Now, it didn't work out in the end because in the end, Ben, what usually happened? Somebody was hurt in the playoffs. Somebody got COVID and too many times in the playoffs, and it just didn't work out for the Clippers. I don't fault them for actually going after that move, but also recognizing at the end of the day, the Clippers actually did hold strong at the end because they could have overpaid for what they thought was Paul George and kept him in town, but they were holding firm to a budget they wanted to stick to for the future of this program, and it didn't work with Paul George. So I do understand that respect as well, but I think technically both organizations won. Why? Because you tried to make a run with Paul George. It just didn't work, but OKC looks like they're fueled up for the future with all those returns they got from Paul George, which included, wasn't just a player to be named later. Like SGA is one of the best players in the NBA.
Yeah.
So winning the trade, probably OKC, but I don't fault the Clippers for trying to go all in with Paul George and winning an NBA championship.
Staying in Los Angeles, that is James Harden, a 2-year, $70 million deal to stay with the Clippers. DRS, last year, the Clips had the third best price to win the Western Conference entering the season, maybe even second best. They are now all the way down the board at 30-1 outside of the top 8 at this moment. James Harden's still there. Kawhi Leonard's still there. 2-year, $70 million deal. The Western Conference, at least the last 5 years, the teams perennially we expected to be at the top might look a little bit different entering this next NBA campaign, and that includes the Golden State Warriors. After 13 seasons by the Bay, the Splash Brothers are officially no more. It is the end of an era for Steph, Klay, and Dre. Klay Thompson will not re-sign and not return to Golden State. He has met with various other teams, like in Los Angeles with the Clippers and the Lakers. But after 13 years with the Warriors, Klay Thompson's time in Golden State has now come to an end.
And it should come to an end. And you can't pay for nostalgia in the NBA. That's how you get caught up. Klay Thompson, if he was going to come back like a vet minimum to Golden State, sure, they'd welcome them back with open arms. But also, if you are Klay Thompson, you want to stay on that same team. You do want the respect, and the respect usually comes in the way of a paycheck here. He wasn't going to say for anything less than he thought what his market value was going to be. And now, Ben, we're going to find out exactly what his market value is, because he'll be a sought-after free agent, not because you're getting Klay Thompson of the 2014-2015 type season, but you're getting the Klay Thompson, the veteran guy that you can manage his minutes, and if he comes off the bench or starts, you know what you're getting. A 3-and-D type of guy, which, again, his defense isn't nearly what it was a decade ago, and whose is at this point, right? So I think you're getting a veteran presence on your team. He can help somebody, but I say this again. I like the fact that Golden State moved on and was like, hey, come on back to the fold, 3 years, $100 million. That would have made absolutely no sense for them. Good for them to move on. Klay Thompson will find a home somewhere.
He will indeed. We'll talk about Klay's future in the association later in our third hour. After only 1 year with the Warriors, Chris Paul was waived yesterday and then signs a 1-year deal in San Antonio. Year 20 on the horizon for the point guard. He will provide that veteran presence for a young team with this Spurs franchise.
Yeah, it's not bad. Sometimes I like these scenarios here, Ben. We take a look at that aging veteran here. There's a lot of knowledge that can teach a team how to win. Chris Paul should be able to do that here. I like the move overall, and it didn't come all that expensive. 1 year, I believe, $11 million.
A few more deals to break down on the other side of the break, and a look at where the markets stand after the first day of free agency. Whose chances to win a title got better? Find out next. Back live right here on the early line. It's a Monday. It is July. It is the first day of a new month. It is also day number 2 of NBA free agency. Some other moves around the association yesterday, DRS, to break down for you. Then a look at the updated markets and the odds to win an NBA championship this upcoming season. KCP, after winning a title in Denver, is now a member of the Orlando Magic. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope makes his way to Florida, 3-year, $66 million deal. Ain't no stopping Obi Toppin. He remains in Indiana. And a few other shrewd moves for the Sixers. Andre Drummond, 2-year deal, $10 million to head to Philly. They also re-signed our guy, Kelly Oubre, the real MVP in Philly. Some may be saying that. And a 1-year veteran deal to get Eric Gordon as well. Again, not blockbuster moves by any means, but a balanced roster outside of the big three of Embiid, Maxey, and Paul George.
Yeah, because you got to have that bench here, and you got to have veteran guys, but also you don't want guys breaking the bank. And in this day and age in the NBA, it's very rare that you see a deal like, I know Andre Drummond isn't like an all-star player, but he's exactly what the Sixers need and probably never should have gotten away from, and actually tried to get at the trade deadline last year from the Chicago Bulls for multiple second-round picks. But the Bulls told us that they were still in it to win it at that point, and then lost Andre Drummond for absolutely nothing. But again, 2 years, $10 million. Like, did I read that right? Is it $10 million per? No, it's $5 million per year here for that. And also Kelly Oubre, who I believe came to the Sixers last year on close to $20 million. Now you're getting him back also at a discount to stay with that basketball team. So some really shrewd moves along with some upper echelon moves for the Philadelphia 76ers. KCP goes to the Magic, which was interesting. And that let you know, Ben, some of the dominoes that were going to fall, because as we talked about, Paul George was also in it and talking to the Orlando Magic. But once they went after KCP, that sort of took them out of the race. And then when the meeting went with the Los Angeles Clippers for Paul George, and they go, we're not moving off our 3 years, it was de facto the 76ers were going to sign Paul George, and they got a Woj bomb in the middle of the night. Valanciunas gets the deal with the Wizards. Toppin is a decent deal here. So we're going to get a lot more numbers coming down the pike today when some of these deals settle in. But I thought the Sixers did fairly well for themselves, and I like that move for the Magic. Get a veteran presence that can fill it up here to go with that young basketball team. What's the one thing we talked about last year with the Magic? Like, boy, can they actually score some points here? This will help them next year.
Absolutely so. And you saw there as well, in terms of Andre Drummond's deal, the Bulls had kind of shopped him around near the deadline, hoping to get draft capital back. There was some reported interest in Andre Drummond from Philadelphia for some draft picks. Instead, the Bulls say we're fully in, trying to be competitive. They were not. Drummond leaves in the summer. Chicago gets nothing in return, as the Bulls have also struggled to kind of ship away or trade Zach LaVine. Big news over the weekend, DeJounte Murray, of course, being dealt from Atlanta to New Orleans. We'll look at the updated markets in just a second. One final point. Kevin Porter Jr., you saw there a reported 2-year deal with the LA Clippers, months after he agreed to a plea deal in a sexual assault case of his girlfriend in Manhattan. He did not play in the NBA last year after the Rockets traded him after he was arrested for assault back in last summer. He was traded to Houston, then from Houston to OKC, and immediately was waived. What are we doing? What are we doing offering this guy a place in the NBA? But I'll leave that at that for the LA Clippers. Now we transition to Detroit, who not only extended their face of the franchise in Cade Cunningham, 5-year deal worth more than $220 million. The Pistons have a new head coach, JB Bickerstaff. After 5 years in Cleveland, now the head man in the Motor City. Dunny Rightside, you always say in the NBA, when you are hired as a head coach, you are hired to be fired. And no disrespect to John Blair Bickerstaff, but that's certainly what this feels like.
It does. I mean, to be honest with you, like, this wasn't one of those moves where sometimes when you get a new head coach in an organization, you can put that press release out here and be like, hey, sales team, get ready, because we're going to get some phone calls at people being excited that this is our coach. It almost feels like, when you have Ring Around the Rosie, right? And you take a look like, oh, no, the clock stops or the time stops at that point. It's like, oh, well, we're out at this point, and we just got to find a coach, and hopefully this works out in our favor. Is this an inspiring hire that we're getting for the Detroit Pistons based off that year last year? And also, usually when you sign your young talent, Cade Cunningham is a good player. We're not, going to argue back and forth upon that. He has a space here in the NBA. But after that underwhelming season, you get a coach that nobody is excited about. And like, oh, by the way, we're going to max out our player who has really been underperforming on this underperforming team here. So not a great look for the Pistons. And also, as you always bring up, no matter how bad they are, they can't crack that top 5 seed. So tough all the way around at Little Caesars Arena, and also getting bad pizza in that arena too. Tough scene for Detroit.
Ooh, and a slander of Little Caesars as a pie company there mixed in. Listen, JB Bickerstaff, the last 3 years, led Cleveland to a winning record. The last 2 years, a spot in the postseason. Last year, shorthanded, falling to the Celtics in only 5 games. But he was expected, with the core they had in Cleveland, to elevate this team beyond just a playoff trip or maybe a second-round exit. It did not happen. Again, he can turn around a young Pistons franchise who has finished with the worst record in the association each of the past 2 years. That was the expectation for Monty Williams. It's why they paid him that 6-year deal worth more than $72 million, but then dismissed him after only 1 season. Maybe it works. A lot of money going around in Detroit. As Donnie mentioned, Cade Cunningham, the extension yesterday as well. A new-look L.A. Clippers team, though, entering 2024-25. Paul George is gone. James Harden returns. Russell Westbrook might be on his way out as well. The overwhelming thought in the organization is Russ is done in L.A. There's been some rumors that maybe he is going to the Denver Nuggets, but Russell Westbrook's time seems to be at a close in Los Angeles.
And rightfully so. And by the way, like I've been around this block multiple times. And I remember when Russ came into the NBA, that exciting tandem duo that they had, and also a trio out there in OKC didn't work out. And I used to coin the phrase that he was the single worst teammate you could have in the history of the NBA. It's no surprise with a guy of this much talent is finding new home after new home after new home because he just can't get along with his teammates. Why? Because he's used to being the center of attention all the way through. So maybe addition by subtraction for the Clippers now, where they lost George and also now Russell Westbrook. But who cares where Russell Westbrook goes? I'm assured of this. They won't win anything with him there.
Oh, strong words. Donnie right side on Russell Westbrook. We shall see where he goes and what he adds. There you go. So when you look at the Clippers, is it addition by subtraction? The odds makers say not at all. 35-1. The price on LA to win an NBA title before free agency began, and they lose PG. Now 50-1 for the Clippers. You won't even see them on this board. But the big news, Paul George not just leaving Los Angeles, but heading to Philadelphia. The 76ers now the third best price to win the Larry O'Brien Trophy next year, plus 850. A dollar behind the Nuggets, who have the second best odds, the shortest out of the Western Conference, plus 750. And the Boston Celtics, again, half the price of everybody in the association, and then some. The Celtics at 3-1. Does Philly, Donnie, in your estimation, feel like the third best team in the NBA, or maybe the third most likely team in the hunt for an NBA title?
Right now, it doesn't, no. And I could be home and be like, oh, man, they should be number 2 out there. But I think they've really improved their team. And, yes, you're going to go on social media like, Sixers got clowned, they got Paul George. But the odds will tell you who's clowning who at this point. The Sixers got better. The Knicks got better. Are they going to be at the top of the race? And Minnesota's going to retool. And you'll see the Boston Celtics probably make some moves. The Sixers got better along with a couple other teams here. Yeah. And it's no surprise. Weren't we talking about just 4 to 5 days ago? Like, oh, my God, the Sixers are tumbling in the standings. We said, wait a minute. Yeah. Free agency is going to come around. The Knicks got that boost from actually hitting first, and now you're seeing the Sixers come over the top. Other teams will improve themselves. The betting markets will settle down, but it's going to be a fun season. At least for me, I get to watch a Sixers team with no Tobias Harris. It's going to be a dream come true for the next 7 to 8 months.
There was a moment on draft day Wednesday after the Mikal Bridges trade and the re-signing of OG Anunoby in New York. The Knicks had the second best odds alongside the Denver Nuggets at plus 750, now tied for the fifth best alongside Minnesota. Oklahoma City at 9-1. That's how we round out the top 5. Right back here on the early line on this Monday morning. It is July 1st, and NBA free agency is now officially underway. It actually started yesterday, 6 p.m. Eastern time on the final Sunday in June, as we welcome on our coach, James Young, JY, for his assessment of what we have seen early on. JY, thanks for being here to start off this new week and new month on the early line.
Good to be on with you. Nothing like starting July 1st free agency on June 30th at 6 at night, but it seemed like we kind of got rolling in the middle of the night once PG signed with Philadelphia.
Because the free agency frenzy was not necessarily there like years past when you see multiple, sometimes double-digit blockbuster big deals right as that free agency window opens. But in the overnight hours, the big blockbuster did in fact come. Philadelphia and Paul George agreeing to a 4-year, $212 million deal as PG leaves L.A. after 5 seasons with the Clippers and now is the newest member of the Philadelphia 76ers. So, JY, as we look at Paul George joining Philly, is he that missing third piece alongside Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid to make Philadelphia a legitimate NBA title contender?
If he could stay healthy, absolutely. This is a guy that can go get a bucket. It should drop the usage rate of Joel Embiid a little bit, and it should also space the floor because PG-13, for all of his athleticism, guys, is a pretty good shooter from 3. So to bring that 3-point marksman in there, let's say, if you think about last year, Tobias Harris, Paul George. Obviously, Paul George is a humongous upgrade in his ability to shoot the ball. And although he has his times when he struggles in a big spot, he still is a prolific scorer. So Paul George, that last year shot the ball 41.3% from 3. This is a huge upgrade for Philadelphia, along with getting Kelly Oubre back, signing Andre Drummond to kind of beef up the bench over someone like a Paul Reed. We got to see how they fill out the roster. Eric Gordon coming in to help out the bench. If they could stay healthy, and this is a big if because you're talking about Embiid and Paul George. If they can stay healthy, Philadelphia is right there with Boston. Maybe it's notch below to win the East.
I like it. I like where you're coming from, Coach, here. But let me ask you this quick question as well. We're taking a look at Paul George. Escape from Los Angeles. We have look at an ownership group because it's one thing that with the Clippers that we know. They're not pinching pennies here. They have the wealthiest owner in the NBA. Why was there a line drawn in the sand where they said, we're not moving off 3 years to go to 4 years, which is what Paul George wanted? And quite frankly, if he got the 4 years, Coach, he never would have left Los Angeles.
Donnie, this is like the wildest part of the whole equation, right? Because Steve Ballmer has more money than anybody in the league.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
He didn't give 4 years because he only gave Kawhi 3 years. But then James Harden, who is definitely on the decline, I know it's only 2 years, got $35 million a year. So think this ain't adding up right now with the Clippers. And you thought that with the Clippers going into that new arena, right, that they were going to put all their chips in the middle of the table and make a run. Now, listen, I know you can sit there and say, oh, well, Paul George misses a lot of games. No one misses more games than Kawhi. So to me, if it was a difference of giving him an extra year, a fourth year, give him the fourth year. He wasn't asking for 5. Give him 4 years. If they give him 4 years, he doesn't come east. Simple as that.
Mm-hmm.
So, JY, as we look at the strict odds perspective, last week when we were all together, we were looking about a celebratory 24-hour span for the New York Knicks. The trade of Mikal Bridges, bringing him to this Knicks organization, the re-signing of OG Anunoby. The Knicks had the second best price to win the Eastern Conference at plus 350. Now, after the signing of Paul George, the 76ers, second best price at 4-1 in front of the Knicks at plus 450. Both teams trailing Boston, who remain the favorites all along at plus 145. We pretty much, in our discussions about the ceiling of New York, now with Mikal Bridges, said the same thing. Everybody out east playing for that second spot, still a peg behind the Celtics. Is that still the same conversation after Paul George goes to Philadelphia?
Yeah, it's still the Celtics. I mean, let's be honest. This is a young core that basically blew everybody out in the playoffs, right? We could stop the whole, this guy got hurt, that guy got hurt. You got to play who you play. And they beat everybody. And they beat them down in the playoffs. And they were the best teams in the regular season. So we can't even go with the who they beat in the playoffs. So to me, Boston is still the clear head. There's still the point is this. With New York being 50 cents behind the Sixers to come out of the East, the Hartenstein factor is still the big piece with the Knicks that needs to be figured out. Obviously, yesterday, he met in Eugene, Oregon with Oklahoma City Thunder. There was no deal done yet. Kind of odd, guys, because you don't really fly all the way out there for that most of the time. Usually when you fly out there, it's usually you lock it up. You lock up the deal. So if the Knicks re-sign Hartenstein, I think they maybe go to right at $4 with the 76ers tied up. But if Hartenstein doesn't come back, they still should be 50 cents behind because of the pedigree of the scoring of Paul George, Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey. By the way, shout out to Tyrese Maxey. Got a boatload of money this morning. So Philadelphia, Daryl Morey is doing what he does, which is make moves.
Yeah, it looks like making it a little bit tougher here on the Celtics next year. The Knicks made some moves. The Sixers did. We're waiting to see what the Milwaukee Bucks do. So certainly maybe not that cakewalk that we might have perceived to be for the Boston Celtics this past year. End of an era, Coach, out on the West Coast. Now, we just talked about the Clippers. Let's flip it a little bit upstate there and take a look at the Golden State Warriors. Klay Thompson has been a fixture, multi-time All-Star, multi-time champion, and certainly a Hall of Famer when it's all said and done. He's going to be on the move. Number one, do you like this move for Golden State moving on from Klay Thompson? And number two, where does Klay Thompson go?
Well, it's honestly about where what they can get in return, because obviously what's going to happen now is you're going to see some kind of sign and trade. I think Klay had to go. I think he took it. He wasn't really happy, guys, when they put him to the bench last year. It kind of signaled that this is kind of the start of the breakup. Now, what's interesting with Klay is the fact that some of the suitors you thought could have went in aren't going to get him. Philadelphia, they went with Paul George, right? We'll get to, obviously, KCP going to Orlando. That's another spot, right? So now you start looking around, well, where's their fit? Two teams out west that want to try to do sign and trades. First, the Lakers. LeBron James has gone on record as saying, I will take a pay cut in order to facilitate some kind of move? So maybe a sign and trade with the Lakers. Or do they go to Dallas? I think Dallas is probably more interesting of a move. It would be weird how they really do the starting lineup because either P.J. Washington or Derrick Jones Jr. goes to the bench because Klay ain't coming off the bench there. So to me, that's the interesting part. The thing you have to look at with Dallas or with the Lakers is, especially Dallas, they may have to add a third team to the mix to try and make the salaries work, to push money out or take money back. That's where you're starting to hear a little bit overnight of the Knicks, who have to shave about $5 million in regards to make the Mikal Bridges trade work. They don't want to send Deuce across the river and get him burned. Maybe that's a way of getting the Knicks in a shed salary so they can go ahead and try and get Isaiah Hartenstein to come back.
The end of an era in Golden State, indeed. A 5-time NBA All-Star, a 4-time NBA champ with the Dubs. Steph drafted in 2009, Klay in 2011 out of Washington State, and Draymond Green in the second round in 2012. So, JY, you talked about the Clippers a little bit. The weird move to extend James Harden with the amount that he made, but let PG walk. They made some other moves yesterday, like maybe Russell Westbrook's time coming to a close in LA. Often in the last few years, JY, the Clippers have been a front runner in the Western Conference. Now a 30-1 price and 50-1 to win the NBA title this upcoming season. What should the Clippers' viewpoint be for 2024-25?
It's all about who they bring in because you let PG-13 walk out the door with absolutely nothing. You let Russ walk out the door with absolutely nothing. Mason Plumlee went and left as well. They're in a stage of flux, which, like I said, sounds odd for a guy that's the richest owner in the NBA and all he wants to do is win.
And a new arena coming to downtown Los Angeles next year as well. Interesting times for the Clippers, resetting of the expectations. More moves around free agency up next. Live right here on the early line on this Monday, we go around the association and NBA free agency. Donnie, Ben, and our coach JY for a second consecutive segment. So JY, we hit on the big moves in our first segment together. Now some of those smaller moves yet intriguing around the NBA yesterday. After only 1 year in Golden State, Chris Paul waived by the Warriors. Now he's headed to San Antonio to provide that veteran presence for one of the youngest teams in the association. Year 20 on the horizon. What does the point guard bring to the Spurs?
Hopefully they're hoping for some kind of leadership, almost kind of the way that he was kind of brought into Oklahoma City a while back to try and lead that young crew. Obviously Chris Paul is doesn't have a lot of miles left on the tires, but that shouldn't affect the brain and the ability to work and kind of work with a guy like Stephen Castle, to work with Vassell, kind of get Wemby, to get to that next step. To me, this is almost like getting a player coach on the floor, a guy that should be able to help build up the team. And at this point in his career, Ben should be very comfortable coming off the bench. If he still thinks he's going to start, I think that's wild because Castle should get the bulk of the minutes. But this is a good mentor, I would say, for the young rookie out of UConn to have in Chris Paul.
If we are taking a look at some other those notable NBA free agents that go around, we were very impressed last year with the way the Orlando Magic played. But the one thing down the stretch, boy, they really could use another score here, Coach. You take a look at KCP, 3 years, $66 million to the Magic. I think that is a great move for the Orlando Magic to sort of help them take that next step with a veteran scorer.
Yeah, I mean, listen, at the end of the day, this is a pretty good defender as well. So to have that backcourt of KCP and Jalen Suggs, guys, that's going to be one of the better defensive backcourts in the NBA. But you said it best. This team, Orlando, was god-awful from shooting the ball from three. They needed someone that had a 40% clip because of the fact that, yes, Wagner can shoot the ball, but he can put it to – he's more of a drive and pull-up game. Obviously, Banchero's expanded his game. He needs driving lanes. Guys, you can't drive the ball in the NBA if you don't have guys that can space the floor. KCP is that perfect floor spacer as a two, but like I said, it also gives you that defensive tenacity and that toughness and leadership that a young Magic team is going to need if they want to take the next step, i.e. get to the second round of the playoffs.
So when we look at the odds in the Eastern Conference, we have often discussed the shuffling at the top between who has that second or third best price. It was the Knicks last week, I should say. Now it's the 76ers after the signing of Paul George. There are 4 teams in the Eastern Conference at plus 650 or shorter, including the Bucks and the Celtics as the favorites at plus 145. In fact, there's 4 teams at 10-1 or shorter, 15-1 or shorter than 20-1. A large drop-off from Milwaukee to where Orlando finds itself at 20-1 alongside a couple of other teams, including the Miami Heat and the Cleveland Cavaliers, who no longer have J.B. Bickerstaff as the head coach. It's Kenny Atkinson, as J.B. Bickerstaff now has a new job as well. He's in the Motor City with the Detroit Pistons. He was fired this offseason by the Cavs after a second-round exit for Cleveland. And, of course, Monty Williams dismissed earlier this offseason by the Pistons despite the historic payday just about a year ago. Was it a good hire in the Motor City to land J.B. Bickerstaff?
If you talk about just to kind of build this team up, I was thinking about it. I think so, because when he got to Cleveland in 2021, they were 22-50. They went to 44-30, and if you remember, Ben, they were playing really good basketball. Then they got into the play-in tournament. If I'm not mistaken, they were the 7th seed. They lost to Brooklyn, then they lost to someone else, and they got knocked out. So to me, if you look at, can he build a young roster up? Yes. Can he have learned from his mistakes of being a 2-time head coach? Remember, he was in Memphis for, I think, about 2.5, 3 years as well. Maybe, yeah. So maybe we're looking at a situation where this guy on his 3rd job, also he was with Houston for a little bit, for 1 year. Maybe this is like he's learned his lesson, but he's good with young guys. It's getting him over the hump in the playoffs seems to be J.B. Bickerstaff's problem. It can't be any worse than Monty Williams. And it only could go up in Detroit if certain players like Jay Ivey, Cade Cunningham, so on and so forth, Jalen Duren, Thompson, these kids got to take the step up.
Yeah, taking that step up also means getting a big contract, as we see Cade Cunningham getting that extension here. We'll see where they go. New rudder here, or should I say new rudder for the ship with a head coach. And now you take a look at your young superstar player cashing in on big tickets. Now the elevation of, okay, you're a good young player. Now you're paid to be a superstar. Can you lead our team out of the doldrums? Which leads us into the next thing. Eventually, what do you want to do in Detroit? Win a championship in the NBA. Let's take a look at the top 6 here in the odds market at the FanDuel Sportsbook. Celtics, Nuggets, Sixers, Thunder, Knicks, and Timberwolves. Before we, value each and every one of these teams, how do we feel about the movers and the shakers over the past week, Coach, which basically were the Philadelphia 76ers and the New York Knicks of where they sit now?
Well, obviously, there are the movers and the shakers of who they've brought in, but both rosters got to still fill it out to see what happens. I want to see what happens with Denver. I think losing KCP was a lot bigger than people think. I know they want to have Christian Brown kind of go into the starting lineup. I don't know if he's ready for that job yet, so I'm a little concerned. When you look at teams down the line with Milwaukee, what are they going to do? Ben and I did the draft, and when they took A.J. Johnson in the first round, both of our heads started spinning like, wait, what? Like, this is a team that's trying to compete now, and you're going to get a guy that's a developmental player? So it's interesting to see. Minnesota's got some moves to make. I love what they did at the draft. I think they're intriguing. Maybe I overvalue him. I think they need Kyle Anderson back. I think he fortifies that second unit. He's another defender, kind of does things the right way. But guys, Oklahoma City, if they get Hardenstein, and they could protect Chet Holmgren at the 4, and those kids take a leap.
Yeah.
Wiggins re-signed today. Isaiah Joe re-signed today. That team could be the team that could come out of the West.
Already the number 1 overall seed in the Western Conference a season ago. One of their deficiencies was on the glass. Welcome Isaiah Hartenstein if they can get the deal done. They flew out to Eugene yesterday to meet with him up there in the Northwest. You look at those NBA title odds, there are 7 teams at a 10-1 price or shorter. The Celtics, half of everybody else and then some, to win a second consecutive NBA championship. $5 added on to the Bucks, and then double the numbers to get to the Lakers and everybody else in the NBA. I love looking at those tiers from the odds perspectives early on.